Welcome, everyone. Did we not order the most beautiful weather today? Thank you. You're welcome as well. Now, how many of you, as your drive up here, just had a moment of awe? Right? I find that for me, and maybe this is the same for you, whenever I get so many miles outside of the city limit, it's like a very dramatic exhale. And that's the moment that I realize, I miss this. I need more of this in my life. And I think for most of us, it's maybe part of the human condition that we take this for granted. And we just assume that it will always be there, and it's not priority number one for us. But for a select few, this is priority number one. And to kick this off, I want to introduce someone that has been, for as long as I've known him, there's been two things always on his radar. World domination, in any way you could think of, and world conservation. And you wouldn't think that those played so nicely together, but for Jared, it's a matter of it's always at the top, the forefront of his head and the forefront of his heart. And when it comes to the legacy that we feel from Gary, I can't think of anyone better to tell that story and to continue that on than Jared. So please help me welcome our COO and president of Young Living, Jared Turner.
Oh. Does it look okay? Two City Slicker? For you real cowboys, Skylar? Okay. Thank you, Shantae. That meant a lot. I wrote down my speech. I usually don't do that. I like to speak from my heart, as you all know, but I thought it was important to capture the essence of what this represents, so I wrote it down. I'd like to welcome you to this momentous event in the history of Young Living as a company, in the history of the state of Utah, and in the history of the Utah chapter of the Nature Conservancy. Thank you for coming and being a part of this dedication. And Jackie Moling is not here yet, correct? Jackie is a lawyer on our legal team who we had an off-site meeting with a bunch of our global leaders from around the world, and I took them on a tour of the easement. And we hiked down to the river right here, and a bunch of us started dunking our heads in the water to celebrate the easement and, you know, what would Gary do? And Jackie climbed out on the same rock that me and Prasad and Colby and everyone here had done it on, and she proceeded to somersault into the river, really damaging her face. So it's kind of sad. So we have affectionately named this place Jackie's Landing. And Skylar actually prepared a sign that will go next to the river for Jackie's Landing. Today, Young Living is donating more than 11,500 acres, which is 18.75 square miles. 18.75 square miles to create a conservation easement in partnership with the Nature Conservancy to form the D. Gary Young Wildlife Sanctuary. Look around you. As Shantae mentioned, we're in the beautiful Uinta Mountain foothills in a very special place that plays a pivotal ecological role to native wildlife. This land serves as a migratory corridor nicknamed the Utah Serengeti by our friend back here. The Utah Serengeti, due to the large herds of elk and deer migrating between their summer and winter ranges here. The easement includes 7 miles of the Duchesne River, 2 mountain ranges, several valleys, and sagebrush habitat that provides a haven for endangered sage-grouse. Preserving these lands means preserving some of the highest remaining natural diversity and densities of wildlife populations in not only Utah, but in the United States. This donation will also ensure the preservation of ancient Native American petroglyphs carved by the ancestors of the surrounding Ute tribes. We welcome representatives of those tribes here today, and we're grateful for the chance to honor and preserve their ancestral lands. This land held special significance to our late founder, Gary, who had named this place the River Ranch. Gary grew up in the mountainous wilderness of Idaho and loved spending time with family and friends on mountain adventures. His 2 boys are here today. You remember those? Preserving this beautiful part of Utah is a legacy grounded in that passion. Gary and I both shared a deep love of nature and wild places, which is why Young Living has been and will continue to be committed to preserving and protecting vital habitat for wildlife, as well as for current and future generations of people to enjoy. We'll be improving campgrounds and creating hiking trails for you and your families to enjoy this beautiful part of Utah. Since I was a child, I have loved nature, animals, plants, hiking, exploring, and protecting. I joined several wildlife conservation organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, when I was young, and I always gave what I could to protecting what few wild places were left in the world. Wild places full of beautiful creatures that filled me with wonder. This project has been a passion project for me and the employees of Young Living. Mary, our CEO and co-founder, has supported it, and we thank you for that, Mary. Round of applause for Mary. So I can't tell you what it means to me personally and to all the Young Living teams who work tirelessly on this project to protect this vital national treasure in its current form forever. We couldn't have pulled this off without the efforts of some stellar individuals. I'd like to thank Nick Winker. Where's Nick? Will you please stand up, Nick? Nick is a very unusual attorney in that he has passions for other things outside of the law, and one of those passions is preserving this place. And he and his paralegal, Patty Lechtenberg, is Patty here? No. Drove the creation, the contracting, the transactional aspect of this easement, the relationship building with the Conservancy, and everything required to the levels required to make it happen. So we appreciate you, Nick. Thank you. Skylar Olson, please stand. Let's get Tara up too, because you don't do it alone, Tara. So Skylar manages our Skyrider Wilderness Ranch, which is the logo I'm wearing here, which was to Gary the most sacred place on earth. And Gary is actually buried there. And this is a 6,000-acre ranch we have up the canyon in Tabiona, Utah. He manages our elk herds, our bison herds, some remaining Alaskan Huskies, and all the agriculture, and he is the steward for Young Living of this property. So we appreciate everything your family has done to make this happen. I'd also like to thank the marketing team, Wayne and Lindy, please stand, and the PR team, which are part of that, Sarah, Shantae, for making the pretty sign and for doing everything else that really elevates this in the consciousness of the public. I also want to thank everyone at the Nature Conservancy, specifically Kara Butterfield, Nancy Sears, Elizabeth Kitchens. Are there any of them here today? Please stand up. Please stand up. Finally, we wanted to express our appreciation for the support given by the citizens and officials of Tabiona, Hanna, the Ute tribe, and surrounding communities. Thank you for all of your efforts to make this vision a reality. On a final note, I just want to state that this donation is just the start. Watch for more conservation efforts from us down the line. We're all called to be responsible stewards of this world, and I'm forever grateful to people like Gary Young, who reminds us of that calling. Thank you again for coming, and please enjoy this special place.
Thank you, Jared. Now, at what age did you start donating your allowance to missions?
Yeah, when they gave me an allowance.
Is this true? When he was blonde and curly?
I sponsored polar bears and
First Conservancy. That was,
Your home?
we had so many animals, I can tell you all about all of them after.
Yes, that reinforces Jared has a big heart for this. And when he talks about the species and all the resources that he wants to protect on this planet, I just try to keep up in listening because there's no way to match that passion. And what I love about that is that he tried to keep up with Gary. And Yes, it's the same. So there's a legacy there. Next up, we have Chris Robinson. He is the CEO of the Ensign Group, and this is an umbrella group for a number of missions, and including the Nature Conservancy. And he's going to be sharing a little bit more about what this means to them in the Utah chapter and how monumental this is for them in particular. So please welcome Chris Robinson to the stage.
Thank you, Chantel. I can't think of a better place to be on a beautiful September fall morning. And I want to especially thank all of you that have made this possible, from Mary and Jared and all of the Young Living team and all the partners. You know, I was talking to Jared beforehand, and it's hard to imagine him as an attorney at Curtin McConkie with those cowboy boots and that hat. I'm sure it's a lot tougher duty out here in Duchesne County. A lot more rewarding, Mary says. When I was 13, my dad figured that the way to make a boy into a man was to send him to a ranch. And we had a little ranch in Bannock County, south of Pocatello. And from the day school was out till when the day school started, every summer from when then until I was 19, I was on the ranch. And coming in this Taviona Valley, you know, not only is the scenery and the richness of nature so reminiscent of the formative years that I had, but it's so peaceful, and you know the work ethic and the quality of the people here and everything. When I was talking to Jared earlier, I said, how did Gary come into this farm or this ranch? And he said, well, he loved it, but he thought they would grow some of the plant aromatics from which the essential oils are distilled. And you know, I think at that point, Gary didn't appreciate this is the Utah's Serengeti, because there's so many darn elk and deer that you can't grow anything here. So anyway, they ate everything. And I do see a little high fence there. I assume that was for a stack yard, but maybe that's where you stockpile the aromatics. But in any event, this kind of thing gets in your blood. It got in my blood, and I had a business partner. My dad had one, really. My dad died at age 80, 33 years ago. And he had a business partner who was named David Freed, who, when this guy down here who's in charge of photo ops, David Livermore, executive director of the Nature Conservancy here in Utah, when he came to Utah over 35 years ago, someone said, who are the main people I ought to talk to? And one of them was David Freed, David Lester Freed. He'd be 110 if he was still living. Dad'd be 114. But David said, I need to get you involved in the Nature Conservancy. And so for roughly the last 32 years, I've been involved in, first just as a supporter, and then since then, since we've had a board, a member of the board, and now currently the vice chair. I wanted to mention just a little bit about what the Nature Conservancy does. Its mission is to preserve the land and waters upon which all life depends. Now, I want to focus on the word all life. That means human life and the natural world. Unlike a lot of conservation groups where there's a lot of contention, you know, we're going to sue you to prevent you from doing this, or we're going to lobby Congress to stop you from doing that. The Conservancy uses the best science and makes it a win-win proposition. Now, today we're celebrating this D. Gary Young Wildlife Sanctuary. This is the largest conservation easement donation that we've ever had. Now, and this is pure philanthropy for the donors, in the sense that they're not getting anything in return. Now, just for the uninitiated, and maybe Nick or some of the attorneys want to talk about what a conservation easement is, I'm going to be very brief, but it's basically where the owner of the land is gifting away in perpetuity certain of the rights, including especially the right to develop the property. So that means that this landscape will remain intact forever, and which is a terrific thing. So, and as I look at the map, I see that the Ute tribe and DNR, how many DNR folks do we have here? Raise your hands. I felt a little intimidated parking my little Volkswagen next to your fleet of trucks back there. I noticed DNR has a lot of holdings here. Now, when DNR acquires land, it's because it's a rich wildlife resource. Is that true? And so this is adding another large block connecting, what the tribe has on its boundaries and other DNR holdings. And so it's a great step forward. And with Jared and Mary's leadership and Young Living's leadership, and I love that this is just the beginning. We're going to hold you to that. But this is really a great place that, while it's been discovered and known for many years as a great trout fishery and beautiful habitat, it hasn't been taken over yet by the mega wealthy who have started to develop it. And this is a stake in the ground saying this piece is off limits. So it's terrific. I wanted to mention a couple of other things that the Conservancy has done in Utah. In 1997, we acquired from the Red family the Dugout Ranch, which is about 250,000 acres in total at the gateway to Canyonlands in the Needles District. There, if you've ever been going into Newspaper Rock, going into that entrance to Canyonlands. And there's only about 7,000 acres of deeded land, but BLM and forest grazing permits. And we operate a working ranch there, ran by Matt Red, who is is Heidi Red, the seller's son, who does a great job. And we also operate a Canyonlands Research Center to help us better understand the effects of climate change on ranching in the arid Southwest. We have closer to Salt Lake, the Great Salt Lake Shorelands Preserve, up in the Layton area, where the Conservancy, with a lot of partners, this is not a one-person show. Just as you see today, there's a lot of people to thank. Over the last 30 years, the Conservancy has assembled 4,400 acres of critical wetlands at that saltwater, freshwater interface on the east shore of the Great Salt Lake. And that we have a mile boardwalk, and sometime when you're up in Layton area, you should take a look at it. There's been many other things around the state, and I won't bore you with more details, but I just want to emphasize again how grateful we are for the leadership of Jared and Mary and Young Living for this foresight of saying this is a special place, let's protect it. And I think in honor of that, when we get through here, I'm going off script, Chantel, but I think a somersault in Jackie's Landing is appropriate. And
Are you volunteering?
I'm going to let Chantel lead the way. There's always got to be a leader to break the ice. And I think that, and it's probably not too icy, but we still need a leader. I want to again thank everybody for coming. There's no better way to spend a beautiful morning here in September. And again, thanks for everyone.
And Chris, if you want to stand back up, I know that you have something to present to Mary and Jared, and I think you have some of your people.
I think that's only after Jackie's Landing is fully implemented. No, we'll do this in anticipation of some somersaults. Mary, we have a close friend of the Conservancy named Stuart Ruckman, whose wife, Libby Ellis, used to be with us for many years, and he's a professional photographer, and we sent him out on reconnaissance here to capture this image for you.
Thank you
So,
Wow.
and then this is Nancy Sears, and I'm going to turn the mic over to her to give these other few gifts. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Is this Christmas? Well, we just have a couple of swag bags for you. As far as the photo goes, we have other photos as well for the executives that we've brought, and we can present those later for your offices, and we're more than happy to do more. We also have a letter from our president of the Nature Conservancy, Sally Jewell, and a letter from Dave Livermore. Thank you letters for you. And then just a couple of gift bags for you as well with some of our swag. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, team. Now, our final speaker is, oh, Mary. What do you say about Mary? Nothing. Is what she would say. But Mary is our brilliant and our formidable leader, and she leads with heart and love, and she is ever mindful of remembering what would Gary say, what would Gary do, and keeping us in check in the best ways possible. So with that, I would like to invite Mary Young, our co-founder and CEO, to the stage. Please give her a huge round of applause.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you. I often wonder what our two sons think when they sit down here in the front row and they look up and they see their mother here and they hear all these things about mom, and then they think about what it's like with mom at home. But I'm really grateful that they're here. You know, as we drove down this road on our way here, I looked up at the mountainside and there was nothing but Mother Earth. And I thought to myself, this is what Gary loved so much. And from my viewpoint here, I see all these cars, and somehow they don't fit here. And from your viewpoint, you see the beauty and the peacefulness of this valley. Gary was a man of the mountains. He was a man of the earth. He was a magnificent horseman. He grew up riding horses. He grew up in the mountains. He grew up in poverty. He grew up working hard. And he always said how much he loved the farmers, the ranchers, because they worked hard for what they had. He said they were God's men, and he loved being with them because they knew what it was like to work hard and enjoy what they worked hard for. But Gary loved being in the mountains. He always said that the mountains were God's living room. And when he could be on his horse and be in the mountains, that's where he absolutely was the happiest. And when he could have his family, his boys with him, there was nothing more that he wanted. It's interesting how he was blessed with so much talent, so much ability. And perhaps after that terrible accident, when he was in a coma for more than 3 weeks, when he came back with a knowing about things that the rest of us perhaps don't understand. But he had a knowing about God. He had a knowing about life. He had a knowing about things that he was supposed to do. And that accident took him away from his mountains, took him away from his horses, took him away from the only life that he ever knew, and threw him on a path that was so unknown and certainly scary, especially speaking mountain dialect and not knowing what he was facing going into a criticizing, judgmental, educated world. But he had a knowing, he had a perseverance within himself that was not going to stop him, not for anything. And when his father came to the hospital and told him to grow up and accept the hand that God dealt him and figure out what he was going to do with his life, and turned around and walked out and never came back to the hospital. And Gary's yelling and screaming at him and crying as his father left, and he said, "It's the last thing I do. I will get out of this hospital bed. I will get out of the wheelchair, and I will ride my horse again." And I think that desire drove him. The story is amazing. It's one of a kind. And he truly was a walking miracle. If you have the opportunity to read the story and hear the story, it's hard to even believe that somebody could overcome such adversity. But when he did learn to walk again, he was embedded in the world of health, embedded in finding ways that would heal his body, which eventually led to the path of essential oils, which eventually led to farming again. I remember when he bought his first horse again. We were in St. Mary's. I cannot describe to you what it was like for him to get on that horse again. And I remember seeing him throw the saddle over the back of the horse and cinch it up and put his foot in the stirrup and swing himself over. I could see the tears running down his face. You and I can't even imagine what that was like for him. But whenever he could have his horse and go to the mountains, that's where he would go. I didn't know that he was looking for a ranch. He talked about it. He talked about having his own place where he could get away, where he could be in God's country. I mean, we have the ranch in St. Mary's. We have the ranch in Highland Flats. We have the ranch in Mona. We have farmland in many, many places. We have our beautiful farm in Ecuador and in Northern Lights. And he loved them all, and he was equally happy wherever he was. But he wanted something that was just his. Gary was a magnificent marksman. He was a hunter. They grew up hunting. They grew up on elk meat and deer meat and buffalo. He didn't like the meat from the stores. Everything for him was wild and strong, and that strength that came from the wild meat he felt within his own body, and that's all he wanted. But he believed, and he grew up with his father, that you only shoot, you only kill for what you need in your family. You don't kill for the sport. It's not a sport to kill God's animals. And he was very strong about that. But when it's so funny how he got back into hunting, because he told me that he didn't want to ever hunt again because he'd hunted so much, and his father was a big game guide. And he was the one who went with his father, who had to track the animals that were just wounded and not killed, because they didn't want to leave wounded animals to die in misery and pain in the mountains. And so he did so much tracking. He was a magnificent tracker. He was just magnificent about everything that had to do with the mountains. And he said, Mary, I've killed too much in my life. I can't kill anymore. And so when the boys were born, I said, Gary, are you not going to teach your boys how to hunt? What happens when the day comes, when they're going to need that meat? And he says, you're right, Mary. So it evolved slowly. He had his old rifles that hadn't been shot for many, many years. He bought a new rifle that he was excited about. And he went hunting, and I said, what was it like for you to put that gun up to your shoulder and look through the sight? And he said, it was like yesterday. And he always got his animal, usually with the first shot. And he said, I'm going to teach those in my office how to hunt. And I know there are many of you sitting in the audience who went hunting for the first time in your life with Gary.
Raise your hands.
It was a magnificent experience, wasn't it? He was fun, he was exacting, and he was very careful. While he was hunting, and it was far from here in a different area, someone said that there was this ranch in Tabiona, an elk ranch, that was owned by the bank, that was in receivership, that was in rather dilapidated condition, but it was for sale. So it intrigued him, and that's when he told me he'd been kind of behind the scenes looking for a ranch. He'd found one in Montana, but he didn't have time to go and look. So when Tabiona came along, it was easy to get here. So I came with him the first time, and as we drove up, I could see that look in his eye that I cannot describe to you. But he walked in the back door of the lodge, and the The wheels were going around in his head, and I could see all the things that he was planning for Young Living. The very ranch that he wanted for himself, where he could get away from everything and everyone, was something that he was planning for the world to be able to enjoy with him. He loved the elk, but you know what happened? He loved them so much, he was going down and feeding them. He was giving them names. They were his friends. He couldn't even imagine shooting one of them. Oh, no, not his friends. And he talked to them. He had an amazing way of talking to the animals. He grew up talking to the animals. I saw him do it when we were in St. Mary's. He talked to the miniature horses when they were going to have birth. And he said, Daddy has to go. If you want me here when you birth your baby, you have to wait. And they waited until he came back, and they birthed the day he arrived. Oh, my goodness. I was so stunned. I'd never seen anything like that before. But he was always that way. He talked to his horses. He loved them like they were his brothers. I don't know. I guess you have to grow up with it to understand that. I certainly didn't, and to this day I don't. But I watched him in action, and I knew how much it filled his heart. So, as it evolved, the Tabiona Ranch became a place where he wanted people to come and enjoy nature, to get back to nature, because Gary always said an individual is not whole unless they have their fingers in the dirt, they're talking to the animals, they're out in nature, and they're being one with God. For him, that was life. And he felt that we were too much in the cement world. And he wanted those of us in the cement world to come and be able to have a part of nature. More than anything, Gary was a protector. He was a protector of God's world. He was a protector of the plants, the trees, the flowers. He was a protector of God's animals. He was a protector of the animals, even the ones that would kill his animals. It was hard for him to take out a cougar or a mountain lion. He didn't like it. But sometimes there's a necessity to preserve the animals that can't defend themselves. But he was always careful. Gary loved Tara and Skylar so much, and they loved him. And they are still crying as I am. But Skylar and Tara were one with Gary in his feeling and their feelings for the earth and their protection of the animals and everything that they do. And they are the ones who live here. They are the ones who see what's going on. They are the protectors as well. And to have someone like Jared Turner who leads Young Living, who is a protector, and he carries that spirit. He leads with that spirit for all of us who are a part of this company. That was Gary's vision for the world. There are so few of us who sit here, but most of us are leaders in our capacity with that which we do. And we have to lead with that, knowing why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing, even when we're in the busiest moments of our cement city. We have to know that our roots are the foundation. The farms are what Young Living is built on. The plants, the trees, everything from which the oils are distilled. And even those that don't have aromatic value, they still give strength and power to those of us who have the opportunity to be in the mountains. Gary talked about wanting more land. He wanted more here in Tabiona. And sometimes we would stand out on the veranda and we'd lean on the railing and he'd talk about his valley, his mountain, his crops, his animals. And he said, Mary, we have to do more here. And I'm thinking, more? Look how big this is. But his vision was so big, it was endless. And we all knew that. All of us who knew Gary, you know what it was like to listen to him talk about vision. There was no end to it. And he could see great things here, but They were not great things of the material world. They were great things of preserving what God gave us. They were great things of preserving the wildlife, the mountains, everything that we had here. And to grow crops is part of that, because that's giving back to all of us. I mean, we have to eat. We need what those herbs, what those plants give us. It's God-given. It's just in how we take care of it, how we use it, what we do. And when this property became available, I cannot describe his excitement. He was like a child in a candy shop. It was so exciting. And we drove down along the river, and he was talking about this and talking about that, and look at this, Mary, and look at that. And he had to drive and go up on top of the mountain and walk around, and he was excited to see the animals. And he said, Mary, we have to preserve this. We have to make sure that these animals have a protected habitat. He said, I want to do this. He says, I'm going to talk to Jared about it. And he'd bring Jared and the executives up, and he'd get them on horses, and they'd go riding with him, and they'd drive up on top, and they'd come back all excited with Gary's vision, and it became their vision. And all of that, all of it, has led to this moment. This is a great moment for all of us. And it's a great moment for Gary. And I would imagine that he's looking down and he's smiling and he's saying, yep, they followed through. They did it. It's hard for me. It's hard for Jacob, for Joseph. There are many of us who miss Gary immensely. But we know that he is happy with what we're doing. We know that he is pleased with those who lead Young Living. And there are many of us. I get so much recognition, adulation. You know, I'm only one person. It takes many of us to make happen what's happening. I can never do it alone. I would like to think that the boys will learn from those who lead Young Living, that they will spend time finding out what it was that their father wanted to see happen. I mean, they grew up with him. He was very funny. He was so adventurous. His ideas were so off the wall and so far beyond what most of us could even think to do. But he was so full of life. He probably lived more than 100 lifetimes of other people within his short life. But he left us with so much, and it's our responsibility to protect, to preserve, and to carry that vision that he left us with, that those who come here can enjoy what we enjoy, that it will go on for as long as our earth exists. And none of us know what that end means. But we want to make the most of it while we're here and make sure that it's always uplifting and positive and good for humanity. That's what Gary would have wanted. I cannot express in words the appreciation that I feel for the few of you who come to honor that vision. Because not only are we honoring that which Gary started, but you honor that which is in your own heart and that which we as one feel together. And we go forward with that honor, knowing that we are doing that which is going to benefit so many. Thank you so much for being here. I love and appreciate all of you. I am friends with so many of you, and there are some faces that I don't know, but I'm sure we will get to know you. It's a long journey that we've started, and it's a journey that's going to be exciting and fun, and who knows where it's going to lead us, but it's going to be a fun walk, isn't it? Thank you all so very much, and let's enjoy the rest of the day here.
We're going to have Jared do a toast. If we could have Jacob and Joseph join us on the stage.
I'd like to propose a toast to the D. Gary Young Wildlife Sanctuary. May all of you come and enjoy this beautiful place forever. Cheers.
Delicious.
The rush.
Good stuff.